Hi everyone. I just want to talk about something that's really important to me. I have a son with special needs, so I just think there's a lot of myths and questions that people have with people with special needs and different disabilities and stuff. And I thought it'd be fun to just go over those myths or questions that people would have and kind of describe them a little better. One of the myths I've heard is that people with disabilities are brave and they're courageous and they're just extra special because of the stuff they deal with. And that's not actually true. People with special needs in general all have to adapt to their new lifestyle, whether they're born with it or it's something that happens when they're older and get in a car accident or something and something happens and they have to live a new lifestyle. It's all about adjustment. Being a mom of a child with special needs, you just learn to roll with the punches and deal with things and make new ways to adjusting to situations and things that you have to do. So many people have told me, "Oh, you're such a great mom. You're so brave. You're amazing. I don't know how you can do all the stuff you do, and you're so awesome at it," and it goes on. And I'm just thinking in my head, I'm just doing what I have to do. I'm a regular mom just like everyone else. I just adapted and learned to do things a different way or to deal with things differently than normal and just adjusted my lifestyle. I'm not any more special than anyone else, really. It's just, you just do what you have to do as a parent and as a mom. The second myth that I've also heard is that people with wheelchairs or anything that's involved with special needs, people associate them with being chronically ill or being sickly or being sick all the time. Yeah, I'm sure that is true for some people, but for a lot of people with special needs, it's not the case. They may have an illness or something wrong with them, but they're not actually sick all the time. Like my son, for instance, he has a lot of things going on and he uses a wheelchair, he uses a gait trainer, he uses orthotics, he uses a lot of stuff, honestly, and he's not sickly all the time. He's a super healthy little boy. He barely ever gets sick, and if it is, it's like a runny nose or congestion. Otherwise, he rarely ever gets sick. He has seizures, which make him need more medical attention and such, but he's a healthy little kid. He's never sick. So, just from our case, that's not the instance, and not all people that are in wheelchairs or, have special needs are sick all the time. That's just not true. The third myth that I've also heard is people that use wheelchairs are wheelchair bound, they're bound to that chair. If they use a wheelchair, they need it all the time. And that's not true either. Actually, for my son specifically, he can crawl anywhere and everywhere and pull himself to stand, and he uses his wheelchair at school for the most part and for just getting around places. Not everyone that's uses a wheelchair is wheelchair bound. A lot of people just use it because, say when my son gets older and he can walk at some point, he would use a wheelchair if we went to the zoo or something, or if we went to a park. He might be able to walk some of the time, but your body fatigues very easily and you need that wheelchair to get around the rest of the day because your body's tired from using all those muscles. And a lot of people just use it for fatigue or for pain or things like that. So just because you use a wheelchair does not mean you're actually wheelchair bound. There are some people that are obviously wheelchair bound specifically. People with disabilities are more comfortable with people of their own kind. It's a pretty crappy stereotype, but that's actually not true. Specifically, he goes in a regular classroom for school, but then sometimes during the day, whether he's tired and needs a nap or just there's something going on in the class, he would go to the special needs classroom and be with other kids that are like-minded or ability-wise. I mean, that's a situation. Otherwise, for the most part, my son loves to hang out with other people that are not like him because he can't socialize the same that other kids can. He doesn't communicate verbally. He just doesn't play the way other kids play necessarily. So when he's around other children that are not like him, he thrives more. So it's honestly better to have friends and people that are different than him, because he is different. For one, because he learns things and he watches things that they're doing, and he like thrives better and becomes a better child and person because he's around other people that don't have special needs. And on the flip side, actually, I have been told by a few parents from daycares that we've went to in the past that they were really excited that their child could be in the same classroom as my child because he has special needs, so they could see that kind of stuff, and they could see someone that uses, different equipment or different medical things, than normal children do. And they actually thanked me for taking my kid to their daycare, because where their kid also goes, because of that. They wanted their kid to be exposed to those type of things so that they could see it and become familiar with it, and not be feel like stereotypical, where a lot of people don't see people with special needs or disabilities, and people just don't understand it and are weirded out around sometimes people with special needs because they don't understand it. I think it's great that my child can be integrated with other children, and that other children's parents don't just think like, oh, he's weird, he's different. They think of it as awesome, I'm glad my kid gets to spend time with your kid that's different, because my kid doesn't normally see that stuff. And their child also becomes more receptive and understanding to other children with special needs because they hung out with my child, which that's a great thing to have. I mean, it's better to have everyone understanding and know what's going on, and to be able to get that that other input, in life, because you do learn better when you get to see all varieties of things in life versus just, being on the straight and narrow and seeing everyone that's normal. I think it's a great thing. So that definitely is a myth that people with special needs only need to be around people with other special needs. That's not true. Children that see someone that's different with special needs or some kind of disability, and they go up to the person and ask what's wrong with them, because they're curious and they don't understand. That's normal. That's completely normal. Some parents will I've seen it where a kid asks a question about my child or other people, and the parent gets embarrassed, you shouldn't be asking that, don't ask them about this or that, because that's embarrassing. Or maybe they don't want you to ask them that question. And most people with special needs understand that they're different, and they understand that other people don't see some of the things that they might have going on with them. And so a lot of people don't mind adults or children, especially because children are more curious and more not understanding how things work. A lot of people don't mind answering those questions because they feel that a lot of people are ignorant to a lot of things because they have not been exposed to it. So exposing children or adults to things that they don't normally see is a great thing, actually. It's okay for little kids to ask, those questions, or even adults, because you don't learn unless someone tells you. So, ask those questions. My son has a G-tube, so a couple times, one time we were at the water park. Why does he have a tube coming out of his stomach? And I'm like, I just thought it's a little kid about his age that can talk and move and do things and stuff, so I figured I'd give the easiest explanation. I just had said, oh, that helps him eat. He's not a good eater, so that helps him eat his food, and so it just puts it straight into his belly. And she was like, okay, and was happy with that answer, and ran along. And to me, that was okay. She just learned, hey, something's different. That kid doesn't look like me in that aspect. They have a tube coming from their stomach, and they asked, which is fine, and I gave her a straight answer, and then she was okay with it, which most kids are when you give them those kind of answers. And it was done. And the next time that she maybe sees someone like that, she'll think of oh, I saw that before, that's how they eat. Okay. And they'll be more understanding, not so judgmental when they're older, because they understand hey, I saw that before, that can be normal. It's not a bad thing. You never want to get upset at your children for asking questions like that, because you don't want them to associate with asking questions or with with what they're looking at to be bad or wrong or anything, it's okay to ask those questions. You don't want to be ignorant, and you don't want your child to be ignorant to things. You want them to learn things and see things. I've had that happen at daycares too. Like, why are you putting water in his stomach with his G tube and then a syringe pushing water? Well, that's how he gets his water. He doesn't like to drink water too much, so I put water in his belly so that he doesn't have to. And they're just like, okay, whatever. Like, they're fine with that answer. And now, months later, like sometimes when I'm in there to drop him off, the kids will say, oh, can we do Kaysen's water now? Can we help you with his water? Like, they know what it is, and they're excited to actually help the teachers do that stuff. I mean, I don't know if they actually let them do it. I mean, it's okay if they do, but the fact that they're okay with it and they think it's actually kind of exciting because it's something different. When they're older too, they're gonna see that, hey, this is not weird, this is not normal. They're gonna think of like, oh yeah, I had a friend in daycare that had this G tube and this is what they did and it was okay. Like, they're okay with it. Not being ignorant to things is wonderful, and everyone should be more open-minded and be more curious, because that really helps everyone, all around, whether you're normal or have special needs. Do people with special needs or disabilities live a different lifestyle than others that don't have special needs? I would say that's a yes and no. No, people with special needs don't live different lives than others. They go to work, go to school, eat, drink, laugh, cry, grocery shop, go do fun things just like everyone else does. They just might do stuff differently than everyone else does. Like, for instance, my child gets cathed for his urine. So instead of going potty on the potty like everyone else does, he gets catheterized and it comes out that way. So that's different. But otherwise, he does everything just like everyone else does in that aspect. Because our bodies all work the same, honestly. Everyone can walk around and get to where they need to go walking and talking. My child can't. He has to be in a wheelchair or use a gait trainer where it's like helps him walk while hanging on to something. Or, I push him in a stroller, or I hang on to him and he walks himself. So that's different. He still does what everyone else does like normal, but he just does it in a different way. It's just more adaptive. Eating. My child eats everything everyone else eats, but I have to puree his food because he has troubles with chewing and swallowing. Not swallowing as much anymore like he used to, but he has problems with chewing. Like, if I gave him a chunk of meat, I can chew it and swallow it just fine. He would have a hard time and he'd probably end up choking on it or like spitting it out because it was too big for him to try to like swallow. So instead, I puree his food, and then it's just like thick mashed potatoes, pretty much, like really, really thick baby food, pretty much. But it's everything else I eat. He just has it blended and he eats it just fine like everyone else. So yes, he eats just like everyone else. He eats what we eat. He eats when we eat. It just looks a little different, which is okay. I mean, that's all right. So a lot of times people with special needs do have to do things differently than other people, but they still do what everyone else does. It just is done in a different manner, or using some kind of adaptive equipment to make it happen. So just because you have a sticker label that says disabled on your forehead does not mean that you're disabled and like you can't do anything. Just because you do things differently or use adaptive equipment to do things, or just things just look a little different, you still do what everyone else does. It's just different. And being disabled may make you different in some aspects, but it's still just like everyone else. And you shouldn't consider that person having a label on their head, basically, because that's just not right to do. It doesn't define the person. They might be disabled, but that doesn't define them as a person. They're just like everyone else. They're just a little different, which is okay, because we like different people in this world. Otherwise, everything would be boring and the same, and no one would have fun because everything would be the same all the time. People with disabilities or special needs are special, and they should be treated differently because of this. That is definitely an untrue myth. I mean, there is a little bit to it that's, yes, a lot of special needs people can do things that other people can do, They just may do it differently or need an accommodation, but they can do them. You never want to think that someone with special needs can't do something, because sometimes they might just surprise you. My son, for instance, there are things that we knew he couldn't do. Like a couple months later, me still thinking he couldn't do those things, he did them, and I'm floored. Wow, like me thinking he can't reach something on this shelf because it's too high and he can't get to it, and he's disabled and he's not going to be able to make his way over there or get to that stuff, so it's okay, leave it there. Well, come to find out, he can pull himself to stand, he can push something in front of it and lean on it, like reach it. So don't ever underestimate someone with special needs, because they may be able to do more than you think. With my son with communication, he doesn't verbally speak. I mean, he kind of does, but not actual words. He uses a communication device. Well, so you'd think, he can't tell me he knows his numbers. He can't tell me he knows his alphabet. He can't tell me these things. But there's things I've seen him do where I'm like, you can do that? Like, what? You're really, you little stinker, you. I had no idea he could do numbers. And lo and behold, he's playing with this toy. It's like a computer toy, and it tells him on the screen visually and verbally a number, and that you have to do on the keypad to like call a friend or something. And every number that they named off, he was pushing without any assistance or anything. And I was like, you know your numbers? Like, when did this happen? He probably could have known it for a long time, but I had no idea because he verbally can't tell me. So that's another reason why you just can't underestimate people with special needs, because they might just surprise you, and you might just be floored at what they can do. Physically, mentally, emotionally, don't underestimate people, because they really might just know more than they can lead off. Just because they're special and they're different, or they might do things differently, doesn't mean they can't do something. I try to take my son to activities and do things out in the public, things he can't do, but if I do something differently or hold him a certain way or get some kind of like equipment or thing that I make or buy, he can do those things. Take him fishing. He doesn't know how to fish whatsoever. He probably doesn't understand the idea of like you're throwing a reel out there and you're catching a fish on your line, you're really reeling it in. He may or may not know that or understand it, but he sure likes to fish. So I have to rig up something every time to hold his pole, because he likes to reel, but he doesn't like to use his left hand to hold the pole so that he can reel. So I have to like rig up stuff or make something to hold his pole in his lap, because he wants to reel. He thinks it's the best thing. He could do it all day long. I can just cast it out for him. He'll reel it in. I'll cast it for him. He'll reel it in. He just wants to keep doing it, but he just needs help to be able to do that. There's always accommodations for things, and there's always things that you can make up. People with special needs don't need to be treated differently just because they have special needs. They don't need your pity. It doesn't always mean that they were in an accident or something bad happened. Sometimes things just happen, or people were born a certain way, and you just accommodate for those things and you help them where they need help, and differently kind of in a way, because you are helping them and accommodating things that you wouldn't normally for other people, but you don't actually treat them differently. You don't act differently to them. You don't baby them like they're a baby, because they're not. They're smart. They just can't do things sometimes the way other people do it. Treat everyone just like you would anyone else, and just accommodate needs and just do things differently, but don't treat them differently, because that's really important. People with disabilities are one-dimensional, like they're in like the same group. Every person has the same kind of disability and the same kind of interests and needs and opinions, and that's not true. Everyone has different opinions, needs, interests, different disabilities. Some people have autism, some people have spinal bifida, some people have hypotonia, some people have paraplegic or hemiplegic, other cognitive things. My child has a few different things, that come into play that other people don't have. There's a group of autism, there's a group of this, there's a group of that, but there's always other little parts that come off of each group. Like with autism specifically, there's high functioning, there's moderate, and there's mild, and there's like Asperger's, which is more of a mild. Like everything's broken up into different pieces, and everything is kind of off on its own in a way. Not everyone thinks the same, not everyone likes the same stuff, and definitely not everyone has the same disability. Someone's disability can be completely different than someone else's, and their needs for that disability can be completely different. So just never put anybody in that category as, oh, you're disabled. Okay, you're disabled just like everyone else. It's all the same. It's not. It's all very different. Another one I've seen, and a lot of people are very unsure about this, and I think it's because they're ignorant to people think that anybody with disabilities cannot lead a normal life and cannot go do things in the community that other people do. And that's so wrong. I think a lot of people that have special needs or have children with special needs, like autism specifically, just because there are a lot of behaviors and like outbursts and things like that, they don't bring their kids out in the public like they probably should, because they feel other people look at them funny or talk about them. And yes, I'm sure they do, because it does happen. But people are afraid of that kind of stuff. They're afraid of people judging them because their kid's having an outburst, because, you know, they're a grown kid, you know, not like a little toddler having a tantrum or an outburst, and people look at you, they talk about you. That's because they're ignorant. They don't understand. They haven't been in their shoes. They don't maybe understand, like, oh, that person has special needs. Like that's what happens sometimes when you have autism. Like your kid has outbursts and you can't do anything about it. My kid doesn't have that issue, so that's great. But a lot of people do. They don't bring their kid out to things, and they don't go to like events or other community type based things, and they keep their kid at home because they don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to have to deal with the behaviors. They don't want to have to explain themselves. They don't want to be looked at funny or talked about. And I get it. I really, really get it. And it sucks that people feel that they have to do that. But on the other side, people probably wouldn't talk about others like that, or point or make faces, or you wouldn't feel embarrassed if you brought your kid out, because they don't understand. They haven't seen that kind of stuff. They don't understand, honestly. When you've dealt with it yourself, or you've been a friend or family member to someone that's dealt with it, you understand. You're very much more compassionate, understanding, and respectful of people that have those things. And you're more willing to be like, oh, let me help you. Like, let me help you. I see you're having a really rough time. I'm really good with kids. And, you know, like, being able to do that to someone, most people don't, because they're just like, what's going on? Like, why is your kid freaking out like that? That's not normal, you know. And you shouldn't act like that towards someone. And it's because that people that have kids or adults with special needs, they don't bring them out for those. And specifically, I like to bring my son out, and yeah, people look at us funny because he's in a wheelchair, but it's not even that. I mean, you see people in wheelchairs all the time, but I'll bring out his gait trainer. It's a big blue like square thing around him with a seat in the middle that he sits on. He walks on that, and a lot of people look at him kind of like, what is going on? And some people are like, okay, sure. And some people just kind of look at us funny, and you know, it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. I mean, a little bit it does, but I know as a mom that that's how my son gets around. And you know what? The fact that he's walking in there by himself and I don't have to have him in my arms or in a stroller, this is awesome. And he's working on his muscles at the same time, which is even better. So, and on top of it, I like to bring him out to those things and bring his gait trainer and not feel embarrassed, because other people are seeing stuff that they don't normally see. And especially if they ask a question, if they're like, what is that? Like, what is your son using? I'll happily tell them what it is and what it's for, because then someone's learning something and they're opening their mind and their horizons to something different. And look at this kid. I mean, you said your son's disabled and he's using that thing to walk around. Cool. Like, you know, people respond much better to things when they understand and know what's going on. So I think kids or adults or whatever with special needs, disabilities, should bring them out in the public. They should do things, because for one, those kids deserve to have fun and be able to do things that other people are doing. And for two, people get to see that stuff and no longer are ignorant towards those type of things, because they have seen it before. They understand it. They know it. And it would be a much better world if we could do that more for everyone. A win-win. People that have special needs aren't stuck at home all the time and they get to get out and learn and be in a new environment, and people that are normal, that don't see that stuff, get to open their mind and see stuff that they don't normally see, and won't judge, and will be more compassionate and understanding because they've seen it and they understand it. So I think it's nice to know all these myths and kind of put some true facts to them so that people understand other things that they don't normally see. And I think it just helps everyone to be more well-rounded. It makes it a better environment if people know what's going on, know how to treat others. That just because someone is different, looks different, or does things differently doesn't make them not normal. They're normal, they're just doing things that are unnormal, I guess. I don't know, it makes sense to me. It's hard for me to say it out loud and make it make sense, but to me it makes sense. And I'm sure to a lot of you that are watching this and you've seen or heard or know anybody with special needs, you understand. And so let's spread the word. Let's let people know that, you know, they can ask questions to someone that has special needs, that they can help someone, you know, with special needs, that they can learn and not be ignorant, and to be more aware of things, and just to be more respectful, courteous to others. And it would be a lot better of a world if we could all join together and be able to do those things for each other and be more understanding.